The first thing I heard was the crunch of tires on gravel. Midnight, no headlights, just the low idle of an engine rolling up my ranch drive. Then came the beams, flashlights, sweeping across my barn and fence line like searchlights. I slipped on my boots, stepped out onto the porch, and listened. Boots hit the ground, heavy and fast, as 4 men fanned out like they owned the place. One barked into a radio, "Perimeter secure." Except here's the problem. My ranch isn't HOA property. I bought it outside the subdivision precisely to avoid their little kingdom. And those men? They weren't deputies, even though the badges on their belts gleamed like they'd just been minted. Fake security. They didn't count on the fact that I was a former Navy SEAL, and my training kicks in when things go sideways. I stayed in the shadows, phone rolling video, night vision camera already mounted on the porch. The leader yanked at my barn padlock with a pair of bolt cutters. Another started photographing my trucks, reading license plates into his radio. "HOA compliance sweep," one of them muttered loud enough for my mic to catch. Compliance sweep? At midnight? On private property? That was my cold open. The backstory goes like this. 2 months earlier, the HOA president, Carol Dempsey, silver hair, expensive blazers, and an ego bigger than the subdivision gates, decided my ranch was an eyesore. My crime? Parking a livestock trailer where it could be seen from the county road. She tried sending letters, then fines. I mailed them back with a single word stamped in red: jurisdiction. She hated that word. Then came the small-time harassment. Someone poured bleach on my gravel drive to etch the words, "Move it." My mailbox got sticker-bombed with fake code violation tags. Even found a flyer taped to my gate, claiming I owed special assessments for not keeping the community aesthetic. Community aesthetic? My ranch isn't inside her HOA borders. Never was. My deed and plat map prove it. But bullies like Carol don't check boundaries. They push until they're shoved back. And that night, she escalated. The so-called security team wasn't subtle. Their SUV had a magnetic decal reading community enforcement. No state license number, no municipal plate, nothing that would survive 5 minutes of scrutiny. I let them dig their own grave. My trail cameras captured timestamps. My doorbell cam got faces in 4K. The night vision rig picked up the bolt cutter sparks against my barn latch, every move archived. One of them finally noticed the red glow of the recording light on my porch camera. He froze. Boss, we're on film." The leader cursed, waved his flashlight at my windows like that could somehow erase digital storage. They piled back into their SUV and rolled out, gravel spraying. I didn't chase. I didn't shout. I just checked my footage, filed it under chain of custody, and started building the case. The next morning I drove straight to the sheriff's substation with a thumb drive. The deputy on duty, Ramirez, watched the clips twice. "Those aren't licensed security contractors. That's impersonation, felony." He handed the drive to their evidence clerk and asked me one simple question. "Want to press charges?" You bet I did. But I also knew Carol. She was slippery. She'd deny, delay, deflect, until her fingerprints were all over the operation. If I moved too soon, she'd weasel out. If I moved smart, I'd pin her to the wall with her own rules. So I decided to play it slow. The next week, the HOA board mailed out an incident notice to every homeowner in the subdivision. It claimed their community security had intercepted illegal storage on adjacent property. They wrote that trespassing livestock trailers were a clear and present danger to the neighborhood. The language was laughable, but it was also gold. Why? Because it tied the HOA board directly to the raid. Written, printed, and signed by Carol herself. That's called Exhibit A. I started pulling the threads. Emails. Neighbors forwarded me HOA blasts where Carol bragged about taking matters into our own hands. GPS pings. One of my trail cams caught the SUV's plate. A quick request to Ramirez, and we traced it to a rental company. Contract signed by an HOA board member. Bylaws. I highlighted sections of their own covenants showing their jurisdiction ends at the subdivision gate. They had zero authority to touch county land, much less private ranch property. Piece by piece, the puzzle formed. Now, harassment is one thing, but impersonating officers and conducting a midnight raid, that's a line you don't cross. I called an old contact, Mike Turner, a lawyer who once handled base contract disputes when we were still in uniform. He loved cases where arrogance met reality. "Let me guess," he said after I laid it out. "HOA thinks they're Delta Force? More like mall cops with bolt cutters. Perfect. We'll let them dig in deeper, then spring the trap." Mike drafted a cease and desist citing state impersonation statutes, trespass laws, and even federal code covering the misuse of law enforcement insignia. He didn't send it yet. We wanted Carol confident, cocky, and careless. Because the bigger the ego, the harder the fall. For the next 2 weeks, I pretended nothing happened. I kept hauling hay, kept parking my trailer right where it was, let the cameras roll. And sure enough, the HOA doubled down. I caught them sending another crew, this time broad daylight, with orange vests and clipboards, trying to photograph violations. They trespassed again. They even measured my fence line like they were surveyors. Except their tape measure stopped 6 feet short of the county survey pin sunk in concrete. My pin, my boundary, my right. Evidence stacked up higher than a hay bale. The sting was almost ready. But before we get to that, remember this. I stayed calm because truth stacks heavier than noise. HOA Karens shout, "Seals prepare." And Carol, she had no idea every step she took left a footprint I could track. The sting came together on a Thursday morning. My lawyer Mike set the table. Ramirez, the deputy, agreed to play his part. And me? I just had to keep acting like I was 1 step behind, while in reality, I was 3 steps ahead. Carol called a special HOA meeting that week, claiming it was about neighborhood safety. But word leaked. They were planning another security action against my property, this time during daylight with full board approval. They thought they were being bold. I knew they were writing their own arrest warrants. 2 days later, I saw the same black SUV roll up again. This time, it was broad daylight. 4 men again, vests this time, reading Community Compliance Enforcement. They marched straight down my drive like a SWAT team in a bad TV pilot. One guy carried a clipboard with a pre-filled seizure form. Another had a GoPro strapped to his chest, documenting what they thought would be their big win. Carol herself rolled up behind them in her Lexus, stepping out with that smug smile. "This is your final notice, Mr. Davis," she said, loud enough for the cameras. "The board has authorized removal of your equipment. We'll impound it until you pay the assessments." Impound? Assessments? They were stringing together words like they'd just Googled authority. I stayed calm. "Step off my land, Carol. You've got no jurisdiction here. County plat maps don't lie." She smirked. "Our jurisdiction is whatever this community decides it is." That line was her undoing, recorded in crystal-clear audio by the sheriff's hidden mic. I gave a quiet nod. Out of sight down the road, Ramirez pulled in with 2 marked units. Sirens lit, gravel flew, and the whole fake raid froze like deer in headlights. "Sheriff's office! Hands where we can see them!" The look on Carol's face? Priceless. The fake security dropped their clipboards and put hands up fast. Turns out bravado melts quick under blue lights. Ramirez stepped forward. "You're under investigation for criminal impersonation, trespass, and attempted property seizure. Everyone stay put." Carol sputtered. "This is a misunderstanding. We're a homeowners association." Ramirez didn't blink. "Ma'am, HOA bylaws don't override state law." Every word went into the official incident report. The fallout was immediate. The so-called security team weren't licensed for anything beyond bouncing drunks at bars. They admitted Carol had paid them cash from CT, immunity funds. No receipts, no contract, just envelopes handed over at HOA board meetings. That's called misappropriation. Mike, my lawyer, grinned when I handed him the sheriff's report. She just handed us a civil case gift-wrapped. But we weren't done, because Carol tried to spin it. A week later, the HOA blasted another email to residents. Misinformation is being spread about our security team. We acted lawfully to protect neighborhood interests. Except my cameras caught everything. The bolt cutters, the fake badges, the illegal entry, the sheriff's takedown. I uploaded a 3-minute highlight reel and sent it, via certified mail, to every homeowner in the subdivision. No commentary, just timestamps, footage, and the sheriff's incident number at the end. By the following Monday, half the subdivision demanded Carol resign. But she refused, and that arrogance set the stage for the public showdown. Meanwhile, Mike filed suit. Trespass, citing county plat maps and GPS logs. Impersonation, backed by sheriff's arrest records. Defamation, for their printed incident notice claiming my property was a danger. Conversion, attempted unlawful seizure of my trailer. Carol tried to laugh it off. This is harassment. He's just bitter. Bitter? No. Prepared? Absolutely. The HOA meeting that followed was standing room only. Carol sat at the head table like a general before battle, stack of papers in front of her. Behind her, the board looked nervous, eyes darting. She opened with a rant about protecting property values and rogue elements damaging the community aesthetic. Then it was my turn. I rolled in a projector and hit play. The footage filled the wall. Midnight raid, bolt cutters flashing, SUV tires spitting gravel, Carol smirking at my gate. Then the sheriff's sirens, hands going up, Carol shouting that line, "Our jurisdiction is whatever this community decides it is." The room went dead quiet. When the clip ended, I said one line, "Property rights aren't decided by flashlight raids." The applause shook the walls. Carol tried to cut the meeting short, but it was too late. Neighbors demanded her resignation on the spot. The board lawyer, hired by dues Carol forced them to pay, slid his chair back and walked out. He knew the liability was radioactive. And for me? It was the cleanest sting I'd ever run without firing a shot. But the real twist was still coming. In court. Because when Carol lost her temper that night and screamed that jurisdiction is whatever we say it is, she didn't just lose neighbors. She set up a legal precedent that crushed her HOA for good. The courtroom smelled like old wood and new paper. Not the kind of place for theatrics, just cold facts under bright lights. Carol swept in wearing pearls and a navy skirt suit, chin high like she was running for office. Behind her sat 2 board members, pale and silent. Her security team didn't show. They'd already cut plea deals with the DA. Mike leaned over and whispered, "She thinks this is still her meeting. Wait until the judge speaks." The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a gavel that cracked like a rifle shot, opened the session. Case number 22478, Davis versus Dempsey and the Lakeshore Estates HOA. Allegations include trespass, impersonation, defamation, and unlawful attempted seizure. Counsel ready? Mike stood, calm, crisp, ready. Plaintiff is ready, Your Honor. Carol's attorney, sweating through his collar, croaked, "Defense is ready." Mike started with the footage. He cued the midnight raid, the fake badges, the bolt cutters, the SUV, then the broad daylight attempt, Carol standing at my gate declaring her jurisdiction, the sheriff's takedown, Ramirez reading charges. Every clip played on the overhead monitors, each one with a timestamp in bold white letters. Mike narrated with surgical precision. This was not security. This was impersonation. This was not jurisdiction. This was trespass. And this was not protection. This was harassment. The jury didn't look at Mike. They didn't look at me. They stared at Carol, who sat frozen, lips pursed tight, fingers digging into her folder. When it was her turn, she tried to flip the script. She called me combative, a troublemaker, a man who didn't understand community standards. She even claimed the HOA had a duty to expand its reach to protect property values. The judge stopped her cold. "Show me the clause in your bylaws granting that authority." Carol flipped papers. Stalled. Stammered. Because the clause didn't exist. Mike leaned forward. "Your Honor, allow me to submit into evidence Section 3.1 of the Lakeshore Estates Covenants. The association's jurisdiction ends at the subdivision perimeter fence. My client's ranch lies 300 feet beyond that fence, confirmed by county survey pins set in 1978. Chain of custody? Ironclad." The judge nodded. "Objection overruled. Continue." That's when the backfire hit full force. Mike revealed Exhibit F, HOA board meeting minutes Carol herself had signed, authorizing community enforcement action and dispersing $5,000 in security stipends from HOA funds. In plain English, Carol used homeowner dues to hire unlicensed bouncers for a midnight raid on private property. You could hear the oxygen leave the room. Even the board members behind her slumped in their seats, eyes down. The verdict came fast. Trespass. Guilty. Impersonation scheme, directly linked to Carol's orders. Defamation. HOA's incident notice ruled false and damaging. Conversion attempt. Their seizure forms and statements counted as intent. Damages? The jury awarded me full reimbursement for legal costs, plus punitive damages, 6 figures. On top of that, the court ordered Carol to personally repay the HOA fund she drained. The judge's final line cut sharper than any gavel. An HOA is not a government, and no board president is above the law. The aftermath was brutal for them. Carol resigned within 48 hours, facing her own criminal charges for impersonation. Conspiracy. The board dissolved the security program immediately. Neighbors demanded a forensic audit of the HOA books, and when they saw where their dues had gone, cash envelopes, vanity projects, fake badges, half the subdivision filed a recall petition. As for me, I parked my trailer in the exact same spot, polished it till it gleamed, and hung a copy of the court judgment in a frame on the barn wall. The night vision camera still sits on my porch, not because I expect another raid, but because it reminds me of one thing. Preparation beats arrogance every time. And if you're watching this, remember, boundaries matter. Whether it's a fence line, a plat map, or the law itself, know where yours are. And if someone tries to push past them, document everything, build your case, and let their overreach bury them. That's how you win. Drop your story in the comments if you've ever faced down a power-hungry HOA. And don't forget, subscribe for more true homeowner justice.